evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Citizens of the World. As you know, we are, all of us, the residents of a swiftly shrinking globe. What was once local is fast becoming global, and our decisions and opinions resonate well beyond our own borders. Join me, your host, Al Zucaro, from the epicenter of the Western Hemisphere, Boca Raton, Florida, in sunny South Florida, for a pointed look at politics, immigration, culture, and what it means to be a citizen of the world. As you know, folks, we appear every week, and we try to establish three basic arguments. One argument is in the area of immigration and international transactions as being the heart of all international matters. The other is to establish that culture and education are a precursor to commerce. And finally, that there are some very specific and significant things going on in this part of the world, here in South Florida, particularly in the city of Boca Raton, that are significant to hemispheric business, culture, and a good way of life and the quality of life. Today I want to start with a story that hit our newspapers earlier this week. It's a story of PNC National Bank acquiring the Royal Bank of Canada and its retail operations here in South Florida. I have been a big proponent and continue to be a big proponent of international business transactions, and I am very excited about the relationship between Canada and South Florida, and have been for many years. I argue on many different levels that there is always an opportunity for Canadian companies, particularly here in the South Florida marketplace, and particularly those coming out of the eastern portions of Canada. Not exclusively, but particularly out of the eastern portions of Canada. The banking industry has been, the last few years, a very significant support for my argument. Royal Bank of Canada and Toronto Dominion have made considerable inroads here in Palm Beach County and throughout the state of Florida. Royal Bank of Canada, however, has chosen to sell its retail interests, its consumer banking operations, to PNC Financial Services for a price tag of $3.4 billion. Some of the arguments suggest that they just were not able to capture an adequate amount of market share to make it profitable for them to continue in the commercial banking operations. But one would wonder, since they entered this marketplace, when they entered this marketplace, Royal Bank of Canada acquired Centura Banks in 2001 for approximately $2.2 billion, and now, 10 years later, has sold their interests for approximately $3.45 billion. So I suggest that it was not a transaction that they are too upset about. It does not mean the end of Royal Bank of Canada's involvement, however, in the South Florida and the Florida marketplace. It's simply they are giving up their opportunity in retail banking. But in the meantime, Toronto Dominion Bank is doing spectacular. It continues to open up branches throughout the state, and it recently has acquired the Chrysler Financial, the former lending arm of the Chrysler Corporation. They've just acquired that in a deal for $6.3 billion. I don't know about you, but I know about me. And I know that I'm pretty much an ordinary kind of guy, particularly when it comes to finances. So when I hear things that have billions in their anticipation, transactions that are in the billions of dollars, I have to wonder that there is good and solid business transactions supporting that. And I am a big fan, again, of the Canadian influences and the Canadian interests in South Florida. So I commend you to that. That story was reported on Tuesday, June 21st, in the Palm Beach Post in their business section. Last week we talked a little bit about the Chamber of Commerce versus Whiting, the lawsuit in which the Supreme Court has now ruled that the Arizona law regarding licensing of businesses, or taking away the licenses from businesses who are employing undocumented and unauthorized aliens, and supports the proposition that a mandatory e-verifier on a statewide basis is constitutional and not, or I should say, is not in conflict with the supreme law of the United States, the Constitution, and hence can move forward. I've been doing a little bit of research for an article that I'm going to write for the July 4th edition of Citizens of the World, which you can find at my website. The title of that article is going to be, "And the Rocket's Red Glare, the Bombs Bursting in Air." I commend you to the Star Spangled Banner. Francis Scott Key's song, written and published in 1814, has great relevance in today's economy. I equate what's going on with this ruling at the Supreme Court as the beginning of some serious fireworks in the area of immigration and in the development of an immigration platform where the states will begin to find a way to protect their own interests in what is traditionally believed to be solely a federal government issue, and that is the area of immigration. And what we find here is that there are 7 words. It's not even a full sentence. It's simply 7 words bracketed in the Immigration and Reform and Control Act of 1986, which says that although states are limited in the actions that they can take with regards to employment of unauthorized aliens, they can create laws within the state that monitor the activities of businesses, particularly for the words are quote, licensing and similar laws. Okay, by creating ordinances that allow the states to control the licensing of businesses within their states, the Supreme Court has found that this is not violative of the supreme law of the land, and the state of Arizona has now been upheld with their legislation and are moving forward with that. The key point I think that I want to bring out, at least this week, is the issue of E-Verify. Now, we've talked just a bit about E-Verify in the last couple of weeks. E-Verify is a system that has been put in place. It's an electronic system that allows an employer to verify the employability of anyone that they hire, citizen or not. And in fact, as an immigration lawyer, I have to advise all of my clients, and I advise anyone listening here, at least in the general sense, that whatever process a company puts in place, it must be put in place for all people that it intends to hire, and that all people need to be checked through the E-Verify system if that system is being put to use. So now the Supreme Court on the E-Verify element said that at the federal level, E-Verify is voluntary, but found no language or no prohibition in the Arizona law preventing the state from making the use of E-Verify a mandatory element for purposes of private employers as well as public employers. Well, that's going to create fireworks. Already we begin to see states like Utah and Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia and others moving in the direction of creating similar legislations. Here in the state of Florida, Senator Marco Rubio has now co-sponsored a bill with, I believe, Senator Grassley that is designed to make E-Verify mandatory nationwide. Senator Lamar Smith from Texas is now beginning to receive considerable support from other not Senator Lamar Smith, Representative Lamar Smith from Texas is now beginning to receive considerable support from other representatives in the House for a similar type bill. I will predict to you that E-Verify will, in fact, be made mandatory in the very near future. It is also anticipated that at the state level, here in the state of Florida, next year's session will see the reintroduction of E-Verify to be made mandatory to private employers. As we reported last week, it was not adopted in this past session mainly because of the emotional arguments made by Senator J.D. Alexander, who has agricultural interests in mind, and E-Verify on a private sector basis was not taken up in this past legislature in Florida. It is anticipated that it will come back in the not-too-distant future. So we begin to see the fireworks that are going to happen both locally and nationally, and what an appropriate time as we approach the July 4th birthday of the United States and my birthday as well. So, moving on, I want to take a moment to just remind my audience, or introduce to my audience, and remind myself that one of the reasons that I do the Citizens of the World show on a weekly basis is to attempt to communicate to the world the importance that immigration and immigration law has on the economy, the local economy and the national economy, depending upon where you are. I am an immigration attorney. Have been for some years now, practicing here in Florida, nearly 30 years. You can find my website at www.alzucaro.com. That's www.alzucaro. My website is not meant to be a advertisement for the law firm, more meant to be an informative place for interests that have to do with immigration, international transactions, and local politics. But because of that, I have to remind myself that I'm here and I'm sponsoring, and my law firm is in part sponsoring this show on a weekly basis. The second item that I want to talk about today is a basic premise of mine, and that is that culture and education are precursors to international commerce. Now, today I took the time to prepare to speak about the Palm Beach Cultural Council. The Palm Beach Cultural Council can be found at the following website: www.palmbeachculture.com. The chair of the Palm Beach Cultural Council is a young lady by the name of Rena Blades. Rena has been very instrumental in making culture a major driver in our community for purposes of developing both the cultural offerings that our community has, as well as the economic content of our community. The Cultural Council puts out a magazine on a quarterly basis. It's called Art and Culture, and this issue that I'm holding up is the spring 2011 issue. In this issue, there's a very interesting piece written by Rena herself. Let me get it here. And where she makes some statements, and she talks about culture as a driver for commerce. Now let me read just a small paragraph that it says. But despite such powerful messages, which seem so clear to us, we continue to have to fight for even a modest investment in the arts by our state legislature and the U.S. Congress. In Florida, the state's investment in arts and culture has plummeted from more than $34 million in 2006, second in the nation, to just $950,000 last year, putting our state in 49th place. That is an incredibly bad situation. And I raise this topic because even in this bad economy, we must not lose sight of culture from many different levels, and especially on the level of culture as a precursor to commerce. She goes on to say, in Florida, it is estimated that every dollar invested in the arts returns $5 to the community. The latest economic impacts reports that Florida's nonprofit cultural industry delivers more than $446 million in state and local revenues and supports in excess of 88,000 full-time jobs. In Palm Beach County alone, the nonprofit cultural industry generates more than $18 million in state and local revenue and pumps $209 million into the economy. I think that is a very significant contribution to our economy, and I commend Rena for bringing it forward, and I encourage our local governments, both at city and county levels, to help fill the gap that is being lost from Tallahassee. Now, I know that that's a tall order. As a former elected official, I know that you have to make choices when you sit in your elected office in terms of the budgetary impacts of any one item or all items in general. But the fact of the matter is it's easy to cut culture because you have to fill potholes. But in order to fill potholes, you really need to encourage culture. So, with that said, I want to explore a little bit deeper into this publication, which I am commending to you to read, and I want to point out particularly some of the upcoming events that are going on, particularly in the South Palm Beach area, the Boca Raton, the greater Boca Raton area. On June 24th, which will be tomorrow, Florida Atlantic University will start a program from the 20th through the 30th, which will highlight the radios, the 1940s radio hour. I saw a preview of it the other day when I traveled with Leadership Boca over to FAU, and I must commend to you that it really is a pretty special looking opportunity on what is becoming a very, very significant campus here in the South Florida. If you take the time to go and visit this show, you'll not only see the show, but you'll see the development of the stadium, which is all but ready to open and will be open for this football season. It will be able to seat over 30,000 people, making us a true college town. You'll see the housing, new housing opportunities that have been developed on campus, and you'll have an opportunity to visit the art and culture section, see this play, and I would commend you to take a moment and go on to the living room theaters which are on campus. Florida Atlantic University is clearly becoming a major location for culture and education and a driver of international business with its programs, with its attraction from foreign students, and with its growth patterns now and into the future. I'd also like to point out to you the Boca Ballet. The Boca Ballet will open on July 30th with a high-energy and fun-filled showcase with their All-American Summer Review, a summer repertory concert. Had an opportunity to visit the Boca Ballet, and I must tell you that in listening to the gentleman who runs it, he was the only person in all of the visits of cultural locations that I incurred during the Boca leadership that, without me prompting the question, came to the conclusion that culture helps, he said, real estate. After hearing him speak, I said, can you expand your idea from culture as a precursor to real estate to culture as a precursor to commerce in general? And we have a date to discuss that and expand those ideas. But I commend you to the Boca Ballet Theater for purposes of that. And then finally, I want to take one thing that I found really incredibly interesting, and I will go back and visit and chat with them more. The Boca Raton Children's Museum is a very, very special place. I commend you to that, but I want to point out one thing that they do there that I think that is incredibly important. They have a program called FACES, F-A-C-E-S. The subtitle is A Celebration of Florida's Cultures. And what it does is it explores the various ethnic groups that have located in and around South Florida, particularly in and around the greater Boca Raton area. So some of the programs that they have developed for children from 5 to 15, just read down. Africa, African Twins. Caribbean, the Junkaboo Band. Spain, Pepita's Errand. Japan, Hats of Gizmo. France, Very Best Friends Always. England, Tea with Me. And Seminole Indians, The Little Turtle and the Wolf. The Children's Museum is an absolutely spectacular location, and I commend you to participating. This summer, they will be doing a number of offerings for children and introducing children to foreign cultures and the like. That is, in fact, a basic premise for me that culture is the precursor to commerce by introducing understandings of people from around the world, allows you to do business with people around the world. At this moment in time, I'd like to take a moment and break so that we can catch our breath, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, folks. I want to jump right into my kudos and chaos section of the broadcast. I actually have a number of things that I want to point out. First thing that I want to point out is a kudo for Governor Scott. Governor Scott said when he came into office that he was going to create 700,000 jobs in the state of Florida. He is moving in that direction. There are a number of indicia to suggest that. Number one, Florida's unemployment rate on a statewide basis has declined in the last few months. And number two, the governor said he was going to reinitiate the Department of Commerce so that he would become the chief voice for why companies should consider locating into Florida. Well, he's done that, and he has brought to the table a young man by the name of Gary Swope, who he recruited out of the state of Mississippi, and Gary has now been placed in the position to help to develop the state's international draw and the state's attraction for business to locate here and participate here. So I commend Governor Scott, and I look forward to the 700 jobs that he is bringing forward. Second governor I want to make a comment about, Governor Chris Christie from New Jersey. I thought it was incredibly bold of him to actually chastise a constituent who raised the question as to why the governor's children were being put in private schools and not being put in public schools, when the governor is moving forward to change some of the thinking in the public school system. Well, I thought the governor was right on point when he put that person's, he was angry at that person, and he told that person it's none of their business. And he then went on to say that he contributes $38,000 a year in property taxes, and a large part of that goes to the school district. He chooses not to take advantage of the school district because he thinks it's important to introduce, he and his wife think it's important to introduce their children to a religious element that they cannot get in the public schools, and he chooses to put them in parochial schools. Kudos twofold to Governor Christie for not letting political correctness dictate the norms that he considers important in his life. Go for it, Governor. Senator John McCain, kudos to him. He simply reported recently that some of the Arizona fires in the past and in the present may have been caused by illegal aliens crossing the borders and creating fires for warmth, fires for food, etc., etc. He reported it from materials that were provided to him by the government, and he was brought to task by agencies saying that he was being discriminatory. Horse manure. Thank you, Senator McCain, for standing up for what you believe is right. And it absolutely is possible that some of these wildfires in Arizona and in New Mexico have been started, not intentionally, although the report says it may, but certainly this is a possibility, and he should not have been called on the carpet for it. KO, City of West Palm Beach, Florida. The mayor. New mayor. I have a lot of faith in Mayor Moyo. I really want to see her do well. But how does a mayor sit there and tell the people in the newspapers and on television that she doesn't know that there's a critical drought condition and doesn't know that the water quality is at risk. How does the mayor say something like that? Come on, Jerry, you're better than that. Finally, an old friend of mine, Bill Booz, got himself into a little issue a couple of years ago which caused him to have his law license suspended. His law license is he is now applying to be reinstated. I, for one, support his reinstatement. I think that the issues that brought him to the table, causing the license to be suspended, were highly speculative and not worthy of the punishment. He paid his price. I think letting him back into the Florida bar is absolutely essential, so I support that, and I will stand up for Bill Booz anytime and any place possible. Folks, thank you very much. We are, all of us, the residents of a swiftly shrinking globe, where what was once local is fast becoming global, and our decisions and opinions resonate well beyond our own borders. I'll see you next week here on Citizens of the World for a pointed look at politics, immigration, culture, and what it means to be a citizen of the world. Good night.